we have to mount the battery, and I don't really want it in the stock location because it is in the passenger side rear wheel well just behind it, and of course if you get hit on that side you lose your battery. So what I'm going to do is put it in the spare tire well on the front side, and what I hope to use is the mounting hold down as the location where I can clamp it down. So what I did was made a little, I don't know, 1.25 inch, whatever this is, took some angle, cut it 45 degrees on it, and made it a little larger than the battery, so that'll keep it from sliding around. And then we'll come up with something, strap over the top, and a long bolt or something, or a piece of strap that goes down there, and we'll mount that to the floor with some big washers. And then I'll just take some more angle, cut some little pieces, and mount it here in a couple places, 4 spots, with some big washers, and mount it to the floor. Should be good to go. That didn't take too long. So I took some angle that showed you and cut it up, welded it up, made a nice little lower tray that the battery has about 1/4 inch all the way around. So it can slop around a little bit. And then I made these little angle plates and tacked them while it was in the body so everything lays flat. And then I just thought of, well, I'll just put another piece over here that's still hot with a hole in it, and then we'll just make a strap that either comes over, hooks onto the existing spare tire, or we'll figure something out tomorrow. But it's about 7:30, so it's time to go home and have some dinner and see the cats and the wife. Well, this afternoon I started at the back of the car, and I wanted to move the battery box from its location on the passenger side behind the rear wheel well, because if we get tagged there, it kind of stops your race. And I think the E30 series and NASA requires it to be mounted in the center of the car. So I used a spare tire well, and I showed you earlier the box that I had made. And I just made some strap and then lined the underside of it with some adhesive backed rubber. So all you have to do, tighten the wing nut, and you're nice and secure. The front 2 bolts are not tightened yet because my arms aren't long enough. And then we need to put in the electrical disconnect. So we went and got some nice cable and have tied that up through the front and ran it through a grommet. Then from the grommet in the back of the car, got some sheet metal screws, can't see that one, holding it with some clamps, rubber line clamps, and it goes up to the battery disconnect. That's a temporary location until everybody sees if they can use it. And then I took the stock cable that ran to the back and cut it and put a new lug on. I got some heat shrink I can put on that, and ran it back through. So it's the end of the day on April 20th. So the electrical disconnect is now fully wired up. So I had to run a jumper wire across the coil so that when you turn the electrical disconnect off, it shuts the power to the coil off, which will shut the engine off, of course. And then the other one was you had to run a little resistor. I'll try to come up with a better way to do that, but 3 ohm resistor, 11 watts, that when you shut it off, the alternator does not backfeed and damage everything. From my understanding, that's how it works. It'll actually send that to ground. So I've tested all those circuits. It's late in the day, so I'm going to test them in the morning before I hook the negative battery cable up and put the ECU in and fire it up and test it. Because if something goes wrong, I want to be able to fix it before we get to the racetrack. Should be. It's April 19th, 2018, and I needed some mounts to mount the fire suppression bottle. So we get a 10-pound bottle. It won't really fit safely in the behind the passenger seat or behind the driver's seat. So I'm going to mount it to the X-bar that goes on the main hoop, and I needed some pieces to bolt onto there. So I had some 2-inch stock, 1/8 inch wall, and what I'm thinking about doing, or I have done as you can see, is mounted my tubing notcher, set it so that we're basically 7/8 of an inch, because that's 1 3/4 hole saw, and then the mount is about 4.5 inches wide. So my theory is weld this to the cage, pop a couple holes in it, and bolt it in. So that should be plenty strong enough. Probably adding a ton of weight, but hey, we're going to be safe first. So here are the mounts. Nice thing about drilling them with a hole saw, we know that they are perfectly 1 3/4, and they just stick on. So I was able to position them and rotate them. So what I did was put my level on there and get them to 90 degrees, which is perpendicular to earth, and weld them so they'll be in the same plane. Let's hope this works. So I spent the better part of the morning and most of the afternoon tacking and welding. So these are the 2 fire bottle mounts. Those are tacked in place. I've been running around doing a bunch of welding, so those will be on the list next. So this is what I've got accomplished right now. I've got the door bar reinforcing plates done inside and outside. On the driver's side and the passenger side. Also went up and cut the roof so that I could do the top of the cage. So that is complete on both sides. We'll double check everything and then probably weld that back together tomorrow morning.
Wanted to do a quick check before I went ahead and welded the mounts to the diagonal permanently. So we got a couple tacks on there, and I just threw the bottle in with the straps, making sure everything clears. If we need to, we'll put a little pad or something down here for it to rest on so it doesn't move around as much, but everything should clear. If we ever need to put a second seat in here, we can always rotate this a little bit, but this gives us the most freedom for that movement, because you hook the cable in here, pull the pin, and this actually comes down, so then we can reach in here, easily pull the pin, and we can also check our gauge. So I'm very happy. So we'll take it apart and weld it. So I have the last of the welding done. So I was able to weld those all the way around the tube on both sides, and also top and bottom on the back. So they're permanent. And I went through, got the harness bar all welded in now. Got all the tubes at the top. So I checked everything and made sure it was complete. Of course, I tacked that in. I want to check that out with everybody's arm length before we tighten that up and finish it. And then what I've been doing is going around the braces to make sure that we don't have any sharp edges for people to get in and out of. So it's the end of the day today on April 18th, and we're going home.
Just got a call from my local machine shop. So I had dropped off a 3/4 inch shaft, and I had cut the stock steering shaft extra long, of course, for the BMW, because we want to run a quick release just for safety. So what I found is the outside of the shaft, of course, it's metric, it's 784 thousandths, but the ID, I don't know, 6 something, 637, 625, somewhere in there. So what I did was I took the shaft to the machine shop, and I had them turn down about 6 inches, so that I have probably it's not going to work, there we go. So I have a slip fit. So as you can tell, that gives me a nice slip fit. Couldn't do it with one hand. So what I plan on doing is we'll get a closer length down here, find out about 7 inches from where it starts to narrow down. Chop this shaft off, and then we'll slide this into that. And then what I plan on doing is doing probably 3 plug welds about 4 inches apart here, and then one on the opposite side. And then what we'll do is we have 4 of the 5 drivers total will be here this weekend on Sunday. So we'll get the final length for the solid shaft, and we'll weld on our quick release. This is a mock-up of what it's going to look like. There's a bearing on this end which presses into this sleeve. Now this sleeve ran all the way up to where the ignition switch was, so I just cut that back a little bit. And it's got a little nylon collar and then a clamp that holds that. And of course this will bolt to the firewall, so it'll fill the hole, also located at that end. And then the steering coupler should hold it on this end. And then what we got the slip joint, and we have our mount. So what I'll do is make a piece of steel that hooks here, and that will weld to somewhere in here where the dash bar is. And the coupler that'll weld onto the shaft, and the quick release mechanism. So this one happens to actually be splined, which from the little bit I've read, those have a lot less slop than what the hex ones do. So we will try it out. The other thing I did while I was out and getting some bolts, of course you always need bolts, is got a couple of locking collars, because we will be constrained down here with the joint, but it has a collapsible portion of it, so in a sense if you push it kind of hard, the shaft can slide down relative to the rack. So what I'm going to do is put these in, and then we can lock those in place with the set screws, but not put any real pressure on it. So if there is an impact with a steering column, this will still work correctly, and the steering column will move down in event of an accident where the driver hits the steering wheel. Today's April 20th, 2018. Spent a little time cleaning up the shop and then got started on this, next thing on the list. So I shortened the shaft a little bit, that's factory BMW, and it is a very tight fit. So I went ahead and drilled my rosé holes, and then I literally hammered it in with a 2-pound sledge to about probably 1/4 of an inch from the shoulder on a 3/4 inch shaft, and then I went ahead and welded it. So I'm going to grind these down and fill any holes that I might have so that the collar can slide over it. Well, it took a little while, but we got the mount in. We have the shaft hooked to the steering box in every piece that's supposed to go in there. And yes, it's a little long. So I'm going to break out the steering wheel we bought and see how close we need to get it. I'm just going to rough it in, and then we'll finalize that on Sunday. And there we go. Ground everything down. Should be nice and strong with all those welds. And then mocked everything back up in the car. So what I need next is probably about a 90-degree bracket. So I'll see if I've got some 90-degree angle that I can bolt to the car initially. And drill a hole in it. And then it'll give us adjustability for the height of the steering column. So there we have it. I found another use for the 3/4 collar that I was going to use down at the bottom to hold the steering column in touch with the spherical bearing. So now it gives us a good point to say, okay, this is where it should be. We can adjust it up and down and make it where we want it. It's April 20th, 2018, and Rod and Zach showed up and brought race rubber. So now we have all 4 race tires on the car. Been doing a little work inside. So we have the master kill switch is wired and tested a couple times. We've shortened the steering shaft a little bit just to give us a rough approximation. We'll probably play around with it a little bit more this morning and then do a final cut and weld on that. We made our redneck steering wheel holder, and right now I'm working on the box for the radio. Trying to figure out a good place to put it. But so far everything's going good. Got little details tightened up, and we'll keep moving forward. Rod was all upset because he couldn't get the chrome back on this door, so we invented our own term, redneck chrome. It's amazing what little duct tape looks like at 50 miles an hour, 50 feet. And what's a race car without stickers?
I tell you what, Jim, I don't think we need to trim it.
That works perfect?
It's right on the money. Look at that, it's right there. Once you take this fold into, yeah, it needs just a small trim.
So now it is a race car. Yeah.
But I'm gonna try short shifting it on Friday and see how it feels.
Race car testing.